Hi, welcome to the Andrew Buckle book review of Comics, A Global History, 1968 to the present. Very odd since it calls 1968 because there's quite a few examples of works earlier than 1968 included right at the front. However, basically 1968, and it's all like underground comics, French comics, Japanese comics, very, very tiny, small amount on British comics, briefest mention, 2000 AD, Dave McKean, etc. But nor is there actually any real hardly references to anything Marvel Comics or DC Comics produced. There's a few examples, but we are not talking many. If you come into it looking for that, you're not going to find many. There's a bit like Steranko, there's a bit of Jack Kirby, but it's predominantly more slightly obscure sort of comic books. But as I say, there's Jack Kirby there. You've got the introduction, a bit of Wally Wood, so again 1951. You've got some Carol Day, Rip Kirby, etc., as well as obviously Mobius, etc. there. I was a teenage hippie, and there's some pages I've actually had to, I've done this video a few times because I've actually looked at it and I thought, oh, I can't show that because some of it, there's one scene with Robert Crumb, and Robert Crumb, I was thinking, nope, I don't think I can include that because probably it might get a bit of a rating on the thing. So lots and lots of examples all the way through, and some of them are just absolutely brilliant. Richard Corbin. Now, I was never a mega fan of Richard Corbin, I have to say. But I say there are American mainstream comics. So you've got some. You've got Gil Kane, and it's got a lot of sort of criticisms as well. So when you read a lot of the comments, you think, very interesting. Certainly his sort of talk about Jack Kirby and the various work that he was producing. Quite interesting sort of. So it's not all super positive. It's sort of, there is definitely a bit of, you know what. However, the Shadow, you've got the Shadow there, Barry Windsor Smith. I love that work. Love Red Nails. Absolutely good. And then you've got some manga there. Some manga is pretty. I picked up one this weekend. I was looking, that was one, the Spiral one. I was looking and thinking, very, very strange. There's some really strange artwork in this. And this one here, The Drifting Classroom, very grotesque, very. Not particularly a sort of one you'd probably sit there for light reading. And you've got lots of other brilliant, I said superb artwork. Absolutely glorious. Lots and lots of examples of manga ones, and Tezuka, see the famous one there. And you've got French ones as well. And you've got here Dino Battaglia. Now, recently I just bought a book of his work, and I must admit, thoroughly enjoyable. Sorry, and you've got here Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Obviously, the Linus. Now, unfortunately, the book I got didn't show many examples of his comic book work. I would have loved that. But still, this is obviously pretty impressive. You've got Hugo Pratt, superb as well. He's brilliant as well. Brecher, just superb artist. Obviously, these are all the European comics as well. And you've got Mobius. I love Mobius' work. Just, that's a pretty green looking, all the characters looking very metal hurlant, obviously heavy metal magazine, and you've got the loads more examples all the way through of different works, French, European. However, there's not really much when it comes to UK. He really did not include a lot. You've got here more. I just love the French bande dessinée, just glorious. Chris Claremont and Frank Miller. So there is some mentions of Marvel and DC and that sort of thing. You got here Alan Moore, Ballad of Hala Jones. Frank Miller, The Dark Knight Returns, and also Frank Miller, this one, Love and War. So there's quite a lot of artwork here, but not as much. I mean, predominantly, I would say that's only 5%, probably American. So if you're coming from a sort of wanting it to be the history of American comics in terms of Marvel and DC, this is not going to be it. You've got Love and Rockets, you've got all the independents, you've got the publishers there. Oh, you've got Neil Gaiman, the Sandman one, see Steve Dillon, Preacher. Lots of examples there. Dark Horse, you've got American Alternative Comics of the 1990s, self-publishing and black and white boom. And many, many, many more. So that's this book, and that's actually quite an interesting book, I must admit. Not one that I would say is the greatest history of comics, However, it does include a lot of things, and it has meant I've actually gone and bought a few additional books because I've looked. I thought, oh, I really love. Oh, I haven't seen that artist or heard of that artist, and he sounds very interesting. So I've gone off and bought some books on that subject. So it's so those sort of books are always very useful for sort of inspiring new discoveries. But I have to say that yeah, it's a fine read, but there's some good criticisms as well. I must admit, going through it, I'm thinking, I haven't really thought about it in that way, and it does sort of think, yeah. So comics, A Global History, 1968 to the present. Slightly odd book. I wouldn't say it's high on my super list of books on comics, but still a very interesting read and worth checking out. So I'd say it's you're interested in 1968 onwards. This is going to cover a fair amount